And we will make this recording available to everyone who registered for the Transfer Summit. But my name is Jeff Mayo, Assistant Director of the First Year Experience at UT Austin, with my co-host, Monica Obregon, our wonderful graduate assistant in the office. And we are really excited for day 2 of the Transfer Summit. For those of y'all who were able to join us on Monday, we had our session on transfer trends and issues, had over 150 participants active in that session. And so we are excited to connect with all of y'all today. And so today's session is on parenting and pregnant student support. It is an issue that certainly has gained more attention on our campus, and I know with a lot of the campuses and folks in the transfer world that I have the privilege of working with, and so really excited to jump in today with our panelists and our student presentation. Before we do that, Monica, if you want to advance to the next one. For those of you who have not joined us for the summit before, I think it's just good that we start with just some of our objectives, so you all have a good idea of what we're trying to accomplish today and always at the Transfer Summit. The idea is to spread ideas and initiatives to new campuses. So we want to highlight best practices. We want to spark creativity. That's something, might not be a perfect fit that you can just kind of transplant to your campus, but certainly inspires creativity to solve issues that are unique to your campus. We want to amplify student voices. As Heather Adams in session 1 said on Monday, transfer students have such a powerful voice. I think the same applies to parenting students, that you don't need us to empower you. Your voice is already powerful, but we can help amplify it and connect you with other folks in this part of higher ed. We want to build proud and informed transfer peer networks. So hopefully y'all are engaging in the chat feature. There'll be opportunities after the summit where we can share contact information for those who are interested. And we really want to experience a professional, or at least we like to think at least a semi-professional conference, professional development convening here through the Transfer Summit. What we hope we can agree to today to make a respectful and engaging experience is to keep our microphones muted unless we're speaking. That helps reduce some of the extra noise. Take a moment to make sure that your name and pronouns are displayed correctly on your Zoom profile so that we can interact with each other and make sure that everyone's comfortable with those interactions. Keeping in mind that together we know a lot, alone we don't know it at all. So please use the chat function to engage, share your experiences, but also be aware that all of our paths in higher ed are different, and there's room for all those experiences, and be open to those as well. Yeah. A few housekeeping items again. We'll be doing our drawing for a pair of Apple AirPods at the very end of the session. Throughout this introduction and during the panel session, we will drop a link to a Google form. You'll need to enter into the drawing through that form. And so keep an eye out for that link. We will try to finish up on time. We made it just in time on Monday. But if we do happen to go over for some reason, unfortunately, you do need to be in attendance. So I know that some of us have meetings right after this, but to be eligible to win, we do need you in attendance at the time of the drawing. If you're on social media, we'd love to hear from you. And you can also see what some of the previous transfer summits were like and the conversations there using hashtag Transfer Summit. So please join those conversations on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you have any technical support, if you get kicked off, please go revisit the email that we sent you with these access links, and there'll be information there to get you this fye.ga@austin.utexas.edu link. Let's see, I'm seeing in the chat, we might have a new link we can provide you for that drawing. So I think Monica created a new link for today that we'll post to the chat. Thank you for pointing that out. As I mentioned on Monday's session, we traditionally have really tried to incorporate, how to make change. I think that those of us who attend professional development conferences and workshops, we always leave very motivated and energized. We've met people that are doing similar work and are really inspiring us to go and make change on our campuses, but it doesn't always translate once you return to your campus into that change. And so one of our goals for the Transfer Summit has always been, how can we set ourselves up for success? And project chartering is something that we have seen has been really helpful. So each institution that has signed up for Transfer Summit this year will have this workbook mailed to them. It will walk you through the stages of considering what challenges transfer students face on your campus, what's the history and background of those issues, and then how do you plan to make an improvement or add a whole new program to your campus to meet those needs. So on the next slide, I just want to highlight a couple of the earlier pages in the workbook, and then at tomorrow's sessions, I'll highlight a few at the end. But for instance, this is the first page of the workbook where you start with identifying, 5 issues that maybe are facing your transfer student population, and then choosing the one that is the most important, and then choosing the one that you want to tackle. And those might be 2 different things. You might think that the most important issue might just feel too large to take on at this time. Maybe there's campus politics involved or resources involved that just doesn't seem like you're going to be able to get traction on that issue. So maybe you choose something that's a little bit more within reach. So this workbook will help you kind of think through those types of decisions you have to make as you are building programs on your campus. This next page talks about the idea of benchmarking and scanning. What's the history of the issue on your campus? Here's where the Transfer Summit really, I think, what we hope will come into this planning stage is what, if anything, is going on in your campus, but also what's happening at other campuses. So whether you're learning from the panelists, the presenters, other folks in the chat, we really hope that the Transfer Summit is going to expose you to all the different and wonderful transfer programmings that are going on campuses across the country. For instance, just on Monday in the chat, I learned a lot about, how do you incentivize participation in volunteer activities? And so Val Coleman from Texas A&M University had some really good recommendations in the chat. And so that's something that I can move forward with and kind of inspire me on how we can get students, how we can incentivize participation here at UT Austin. And then finally, one that I really wanted to highlight, the workbook is something like 12, 16 pages long. And so we're not going through all of it, but something I did want to highlight is the idea of defining what's in the scope of your work and out of the scope of the work. So for any project you're trying to take on, I really recommend figuring out and being very specific on what you're trying to accomplish and who you're serving and those types of items. But maybe even more importantly is being very clear on what's outside the scope of the work. Mission creep and tagging on additional things or reaching an audience that you didn't have in mind at first can really bog down and slow down a new program. And so if you and your stakeholders and all of the folks in your leadership are all on the same page about what you're trying to accomplish, but also very clearly what is outside of that scope, it can be really helpful to set those parameters early on. So as I mentioned, we'll talk about a little bit more about some of the later pages in the workbook on Thursday, but even though we're only sending 1 or 2 physical copies, we'll make a PDF available of that, again, to everyone who's registered for the summit. So, why we are all here today is to talk about parenting and pregnant student support. This issue, I think is one that does not always get the attention that other student populations get. And so, and it's very related to transfer students. So many student parents, kind of collect college credits along the way, piecing together at least the early years of progress towards a degree. And so we saw this as an important transfer issue to discuss at Summit. It's also very much an equity issue. As you can see with some of these statistics, 1 in 5 college students is a parent of a young child. In Texas, where we are, that number is 1 in 4. 40% of Black women in college are mothers. And speaking of mothers, they are twice as likely to be unmarried as fathers. So they have additional responsibilities in being a single parent. 60% of student parents are first-gen college students. So navigating these spaces in higher education is already difficult as a first-generation student. And so, and also keeping in mind that student parents are much more likely to report having financial need than their peers. And so across the board, race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, support for parenting and pregnant students is absolutely an issue of creating equity for all students in higher ed. So just wanted to kind of give that context for today's conversation, which we'll start off with 2 amazing panelists that we're so happy are here to join us today. We have Tracy Lewis. Tracy is the director of the Access Program at The Ohio State University. The Access Program supports parenting students in college by providing the resources and supports necessary to help them overcome the barriers that may possibly keep them from graduating. A leader nationally in the support of parenting students, for the last 15 years, Tracy and her team have coordinated the highly successful and annual National Student Parent Support Symposium that focuses on policies and best practices in serving parenting students on college and university campuses. She's involved in a number of related organizations. I'm just going to name a few because we'd be here all day if we talked about how involved Tracy is on this issue. But she's involved with the Institute for Women's Policy Research Student Parent Success Initiatives Group, which, if you're not familiar, that they are doing some of the best research and just collecting data on student parents that I found, at least. So a wonderful group there. A member of the National Coalition for Campus Children's Centers, an advisory board member for the National Center for Student Parent Programs, and she's co-chair of the OSU Pregnant and Parenting Students Group. Welcome, Tracy. And then we also have Beth Jackson Pardo. She's the executive director of Project Self-Sufficiency, a nonprofit organization in Southern California that serves single parents in college. Project Self-Sufficiency helps single parents graduate from college and launch their careers by providing a long-term case management, financial assistance, social support, and professional development opportunities. She received her BA from UC San Diego and her Master's of Social Work from Humboldt State University. She has served in various social work and nonprofit roles, including in child welfare as a family maintenance, family reunification social worker, and later as a quality assurance case reviewer assessing outcomes for children in foster care. So welcome, Beth. My first question is just for both of y'all. How did you first work with or get involved with parenting students? Tracy, if you want to start us off.
I'd have to make sure I remember to take off mute. I kind of started, I was at the university for 17 years as the academic advisor in the College of Social Work. And through my work there, I met the former director of, or supervisor over the Access program. And she was like, you know, I like the way you interact with students, you're knowledgeable about university resources, as well as community resources, because I am a social worker and I've grown up in Columbus. And so she was like, you know, I think that we need to have a different lens because the person who was in the position was more of a higher ed person. And she says, I think we need to have a different, more holistic lens. And I think you would fit well. So if this position ever becomes available, I'd like for you to apply for it. Probably about 2 or 3 years after that, it became available and I applied, and the rest is history. Here I am. And I've been here in this position for the last 16 years.
Wow. So it sounds like pretty organic, you know, that it was just something that someone saw in you and your interactions with student parents. Yep, that's great. Exactly. Yeah. Beth, how about yourself?
I came into it kind of by accident as well. I think my first, really meaningful encounter with a parenting student was in my graduate program. I had a really good friend who became pregnant the first year, had her baby over the summer, and then she completed the program with an infant. And I remember just being so impressed and having so much respect for her, watching her, raise this little child, attend classes and like pull it off. And that really, really stuck with me. And so a few years later, I was looking for a job with better work-life balance because I just had my daughter, and I found Project Self-Sufficiency, which serves single parents in college. And the mission just really spoke to me, in part because I remembered my good friend. So I've been there for about 5 years now, and it's an amazing job. I love working with the students and helping them, get through college and persist even through like these incredibly tough obstacles that they're up against, and the odds are against them, right? Something like less than a third of single moms actually complete their degrees once they start. But with support, they can do it. So I've just been really privileged to be a part of this work.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think you highlighted a great part that, the more I talk to folks who work in this world, they share how rewarding the experience is, and that's just great to hear from you both. So Beth, I wanted to start the first kind of content question with you. So you are uniquely positioned, I think, at least with Project Self-Sufficiency, to work with parenting students across institutional types. You serve like a geographic area and not just one institution. Our attendees today represent a range of schools, 2-year, 4-year, public, private, HBCUs, HSIs. So across institutions, what have you seen to be some of the greatest challenges to parenting student success, specifically in degree attainment, like you mentioned? And what are some of the greatest strengths that you see in these students?
Yeah, so Project Self-Sufficiency, we work with students who are, they're just starting at community college, or they've transferred to a 4-year university. We've worked with some teachers' credential students, master's level, and they come from public colleges, private colleges, online colleges, vocational programs. So we definitely do get a very good cross-section. We recently did a poll, actually, asking that question to the students. So I can certainly share like my impressions, but the top 3 things that came up for the students that we polled were: number 1 was insufficient income, number 2 was stress, and number 3 was housing instability and unaffordability. They have a lot of different stressors from a lot of different angles, childcare, mental health, issues with raising children in general, lack of family support, but those were the three that really rose to the top. In our area in Southern California, it's not uncommon to spend 60, 70, 80% of your income on housing when you're a low income family. And so it's just really tight month to month, and there's not a whole lot of affordable housing inventory in the area. So it's just rough. And I think in terms of, the transfer student experience, that's when a lot of them struggle. Typically, they're going from a community college to, in our state, it's the Cal State system, the California State University system. And it's a moment where I see them struggle again and again. And it's like changing over programs, it's navigating a different campus. They're typically very well connected in their community colleges, and all of a sudden they have to start over making these new connections with other programs. And we can get into that a little bit later. In terms of their strengths, they're intensely motivated people. I hear a lot from them. There is no plan B for me. This is what I'm doing. And so it's this dogged determination, because they know that their children are watching them. And so there's this never give up mentality that's just incredibly inspiring day to day. And I think sometimes in my field, in the public, sometimes there's stigma around being, a single mom in college, right? In my field, sometimes it goes too far in the opposite direction, where we praise them as, oh, they're superhuman, right? Oh, I could never do that. And the reality is you could too, if you were in that position. These are everyday people just facing really tough situations, and they're rising to the occasion. They're not superhuman. They're just pulling it off. So I like to stress that. But yeah, this mentality of like, I'm not going to give up, is what I've seen to be their greatest strength, and just persisting and continuing to make it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's important, I don't think it's obviously meant in a good way when we say like they must be, superheroes and they must have these superpowers.
Right. I say it too.
It's right. It does give me pause to say like, no, these are these are students, these are people, these are parents who are, like you said, determined and just, fighting as hard as they can to make it all work. So I appreciate you putting it in those terms. So Tracy, my first question for you, a term that comes up often when you're looking into student parenting issues is the term time poverty. With recent studies finding that parenting students, especially those with the younger children, have extreme demands on their time. Probably not surprising to anybody here. What you might find interesting is just how demanding that is. These studies have found that students with preschool age children had only about 10 hours a day for schoolwork, sleeping, eating, and leisure activities, compared to 21 hours that childless students had. This results in parents having only minutes of free or leisure time in a typical day. How do you build supportive programming that avoids feeling like an additional demand on parents' limited time?
The way that we've done it is we try to focus on making our programming fun, interactive, and considering that we're working from a two-generation approach, we're doing programming for everybody. So from our infants all the way up to our parents. And so pre-COVID, we met weekly for 2 hours on a Tuesday evening, and we would provide dinner from 5 to 5:30, so students didn't have to worry about cooking. We provided childcare for our 0 to 5, not yet in kindergarten. So that gave parents a break. They could eat dinner together as a family if they wanted to, but most times the kids didn't want to be bothered with their parents. They wanted to, sit and socialize together. And that was okay as well. But the parents had an opportunity to come together and just kind of catch up with other parents and, just talk and socialize. And so we had our older kids in our computer lab, and we had a mentoring program for them. And so we had college students that would come in and do some group mentoring, and we would do projects and activities with them as well. So when we had our parents down the hall doing programming, We also had our school age kids doing programming, and then we had high schoolers that would be in providing, because they have to do community service, they were providing the supervision for our younger kiddos and reading books and interacting with them with puzzles and games and those kinds of things. And so the programming that we provided, even though it focused on like academic success, life skills, financial literacy, time management, healthy relationships and mental health, and all of those topics, we brought in people who, you know, one of the main things that we would say is it has to be interactive. It has to be engaging. It has to be, I mean, we can talk about mental health and it can be in a supportive, but yet entertaining kind of way. And so for us, our students really enjoyed coming to programming because it gave them an opportunity. Oh, I don't have to think about dinner. I don't have to think about childcare. I can just go and sit and socialize with some of the other students that are there. And I can just take a moment to breathe and just kind of hang out and be me. Because my kids are going to be cared for, dinner's cared for, and our programming is right there in the building where they are. So most times they just had to come down the elevator, or they had to walk across the grass if they were in one of the other buildings. So it was easy for them to get to, it was interactive, it was fun, but yet it was also timely in regards to some things that they needed to focus on. Of course, post-COVID, we dropped it from 2 hours a week to 1 hour a month, because we saw folks were getting stressed being on Zoom all the time, and if they had school agers, the school agers are on Zoom and they're trying to help them, and they're on Zoom for their own classes, and so that just caused a whole lot of stress for them. So we dropped it down to just 1 hour, and mostly what we did is we did what's called Let's Talk. And it was an opportunity for them to just join for an hour and just talk about, things that are going well. If you're stressed, what's going on, being able to share and not feel so isolated, because they're like, I don't think anybody's experiencing this. And then when they find out that somebody else is, it's like, oh, wow. Okay, well, tell me, how are you managing this? So COVID had us in a position where we were limited with what we could do, and it did provide a lot of isolation, but being able to come together just for that 1 hour a month. But we offered them 4 times, so we had it every week, but we only required them to come 1 time for 1 hour and just talk. If they wanted to come more, that was fine. So that was kind of how we were able to kind of meet that time poverty piece, by making it fun and exciting. And the one thing the students are saying now is that they can't wait to come back to programming because they miss that interaction and they miss the activities and the things that we would do.
Thank you for that, and for tying it into these, these past 2 years where, Zoom burnout is compounded for parenting students, and the difficulties for a group that already felt isolated and excluded, that, not having those opportunities to build community. Hopefully that's something that we'll touch on more. And I think our student presenter next will also touch on the idea of community. So thank you, Tracy. Beth, according to Project Self-Sufficiency's mission, you provide parenting students with quote, customized wraparound services through their educational journey and transition into a career. Such services range from textbook assistance, counseling, professional development opportunities, to some what I feel like are, unique or innovative programs like emergency rental housing assistance, auto assistance, and holiday support. Can you speak to the importance of meeting both academic and non-academic needs? How might student leaders that are in this in attendance today consider such holistic view of parenting students in their work?
Sure. So I think we're really lucky being a privately funded nonprofit where we're able to be pretty flexible. So we do a lot of client focus groups to figure out what do you need. And so our services and our financial support is pretty flexible. And I'm really grateful for that. And the gist of it is that we recognize that your non-academic needs impact your academic life, right? If your kid is sick or you're worried about making rent, you're going to have a hard time focusing on your final exam. And so parenting students are just like any other parent or any other student. There's a lot more going on under the surface that you don't necessarily know when you interact with somebody kind of superficially. And these multiple stressors add up. And so for parenting students, if they're, it's just so logistically, emotionally, and financially difficult to be a parenting student that when something has to give, oftentimes that something ends up being school. Right? They got to keep working. They have to keep taking care of their children. They've got to pay their rent. They've got to make dinner, but they can probably drop a class or they can take a break that semester. And so we try to step in to see what we can do to take the edge off, to help keep them enrolled if at all possible, or support them on that return. And I think in terms of, other students, incorporating this into their work, it would just be to understand that parenting students have this huge extra responsibility of caregiving. And so it impacts everything, right? And just like everybody you meet, you're not always getting the full story. There's a lot going on in people's lives. And especially when you look at that equity slide, there's a lot going on in parenting students' lives that you wouldn't necessarily know from the first conversation with them. So keeping that patience and understanding and extending that grace to them when you work with them, and just being aware of some of the challenges that they're up against would be my hope.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's not necessarily a policy that you have to, but just like mindfulness and empathy and grace can go a long way in these kind of personal interactions that our student leaders, for many of our offices, the student leaders are the ones having the conversations and being the support, the frontline support for students. So knowing that there's these smaller things that we can all do to be supportive, I think is really powerful. So Tracy, your program started at Ohio State in 1989, from what I could tell online. And for many of the students, staff, and faculty here with us today or watching this recording, they may not have a dedicated office to parenting student support. As we said in Monday's session, we have always found transfer students to be exceptionally effective advocates for change. Where would you suggest someone start, whether a student leader, staff member? Where should they start when looking to address parenting student needs on their campus? Is it with data collection, finding allies on campus? Is the funding the first thing that has to happen? Where do you see as like a really good starting point?
Okay, well, to answer your questions is yes, 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 and yes. You need to start with collecting data because you need to know who you have on campus, undergrad, grad, professional, and then how many are there, how many parenting students you have on the campus. So if you don't have the data, you don't know where to start. So it may be that you may think that there's a lot of parenting students on campus, but when you actually get the data, maybe there's not as many as you thought, or there may be, way more than what you thought. And that kind of directs which way you should go. You can also have the students, because if you find out where they are and who they are, you can have them become involved in what you're trying to create. The best way, because it's if I say, they need this, they need this, they need this, but maybe they don't, and the best way to know what their needs are and what's going to best help them be able to be successful is to talk to them and find out, what it is that they need through focus groups, through surveys, having them involved in actually saying, no, I really don't need housing. I'm okay with that. What I need the most is I need childcare, and I need childcare on campus because I'm spending 30 minutes, each way, trying to get to my, trying to get to my child's daycare. And, and then the daycare is past the campus. And so, we're just thinking, oh, okay, they need housing, but they may be okay with that. So having their input is key as well as you're looking to start programs. And then once you have the data, the information from them, then you can, present it around campus to get buy-in from faculty, from staff, from other leadership, and then from students, because we're finding that the best allies for parenting students are non-parenting students. And because if I say it, I may be the lone tree in the forest saying, parenting students need this, parenting students need this. But if parenting students are saying it, and then they have allies that are coming to say it, the leadership of the university is gonna hear it more from students than they will from me, because as you said, and as it's been said in the past, their voices are so powerful. And so using their voices to move the needle on campus in regards to creating those relationships or those programs are key. The other thing is creating collaborative relationships. It's extremely important, both on campus and off campus. You have to think out of the box, because there may be things that parenting students may need that you may not find on campus, but it is in the community. And so being able to formulate those collaborations to provide that support helps. I mean, we have a collaboration with because of asbestos and all kinds of other things, our family housing had to be torn down, but it hasn't been replaced yet. But through a community collaboration with a management company that created housing specifically for parenting students, they now give us office space. And I work with all students, no matter which school they go to, but the majority of the students that live there are Ohio State students, and it's maybe 3 miles from campus. Not close enough, and we're working and advocating for, on-campus housing, but it's an option. On campus, we are working with like departments to create space. We just opened up our family zone in our main library, where parents can bring their kids to the library. There's space where the kids can play. There's, kid furniture, there's kid books. It's comfortable seating, and it's right next to the computer area. So parents can be on the computer while their kiddos are playing or reading a book. We just also got approval with the College of Social Work, where they're gonna take space in their underutilized lower level, and we're gonna open up a family lounge. So, looking at collaborations and the resources and the supports that you have on campus are extremely, extremely important. And I know one of the ways that, we have worked with PERG and the Family Friendly Campus Toolkit, that kind of helps you be able to organize your thoughts. And it kind of helps guide you through, looking at the resources on your campus and the things that you can do to raise awareness and develop new resources to support students. And I can put that in their website in the chat if folks would like, so that they can have that information and read up on how they can do the family friendly toolkit.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. That's certainly a resource that we've used at UT as we've really explored parenting student support over the last year or so. And hearing about your programming, I'm just really jealous. And those are conversations we're having now. This past Friday we had a conversation about that touched on the idea of where children can be on campus, where what current policies exist that give guidance on that issue. And so definitely something that would involve more than just one office, with the idea of creating a family friendly campus. It doesn't just happen with a handful of people making that work. And so thank you for that advice on collaborating and finding allies. Very important work. I want to make sure that we get to this question, so I'm going to jump to this one. But as I mentioned at the top of the session, parenting student support is definitely an issue of equity. I mentioned a few statistics that highlight this point, but do you have advice, and as we mentioned with Tracy's question, not every campus already has a office for students with dependents. So knowing that, how can student leaders and staff work with other offices to help support these intersectional identities, such as, related to gender, race, ethnicity, first gen status? And so Beth, because you work with so many different campuses, have you seen any work that would help kind of, if they don't have something for parents, what other offices are student parents utilizing?
Yeah, so you've nailed it. The parenting students typically have a lot of intersecting identities, and there are a lot of wonderful programs on campus that serve these various different identities. There's not always a whole lot of communication or collaboration between them. They're typically spread out on campus, so very decentralized. And I think that there are efforts to communicate and collaborate, but I think it would be an improved student experience if there was more of that. So more cross referrals, more warm handoffs. I know it's difficult in a campus to, try to cluster these types of programs together in the same building or the same office, but that's always, physical proximity is always really helpful. But in the absence of that, really making sure if you have a student come to you and you're the first generation program and you notice that they mentioned they have a child, you make sure you're following up with them to get them connected to the other programs. You don't just focus on your own program and your own grant and your own budget, but making sure that that student gets connected to the other one. And a warm handoff means not necessarily, it could be just an email where you copy everybody on it, right? It could also be a little bit of follow-up. I think, again, that transfer point is really critical, where maybe on one campus, the different departments are really gelled and working well together, but there's less conversation between, the initial school and the school where they transfer, right? So how do we bridge that gap in terms of communication and collaboration? Once you start getting across campuses, it gets a little trickier. So I think it's, not operating in silos, right? Remembering that we all have lots of different identities and working together to make sure that all those identities are served in a functional way. So we're not expecting students to trek across campus and navigate all sorts of different systems. We can take that burden on ourselves on an administrative level, right? But yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I think you, I appreciate you bringing up the idea between 2-year to 4-year partnerships and, making sure that parenting students aren't lost in those conversations. Oftentimes it is very much about articulation agreements and credit transfer and applicability towards majors, minors, certificates, et cetera. But some of those unique needs for populations like student parents aren't always at the forefront of those conversations. So, but it's important, I think, as a number of people have mentioned in the chat, these resources can determine if somebody is taking 3 hours or 6 hours or 9 hours, whether they're taking semesters off, if they're able to continue on with their degree. I think all of us understand that perhaps the worst outcome for a student is leaving with debt, the debt of a degree without the actual credential, and the ability to go into a career that will help eventually pay that off. But leaving with the debt without the credential is really, really heartbreaking. And so making sure that these essential resources, that there's a smooth transition from the 2-year to the 4-year is so key. So before we close out our panel, I wanted to make sure that Tracy could tell us a little bit more about the symposium put on by your office. I know it's coming up relatively soon. And so, and I think today's audience is obviously one interested in this subject. And I think they might really benefit from being in attendance at your symposium. If you could tell us more about it.
Okay, I knew I was going to forget to unmute myself at some point or another. um, the symposium has been going along for, I think this will be our 16th year. And it is a great opportunity for folks who are interested in this work, folks who are doing this work to come together and talk with other people across the country, because people have some great ideas and are doing some great things on their campuses. And this gives you the opportunity to hear what people are doing and be able to maybe take some of those ideas and bring them back to your campus and implement them as well. As it says, it'll be on May the 18th and 19th. It is going to be virtual. And as we have done since we had to cancel the symposium due to the uptick in COVID, this will be our 3rd year virtual. We are offering it free of charge because we want to keep that conversation going in the community. We want to have people continue to learn and grow and develop and be able to talk about, the things that they're doing on their campuses, or, be able to ask questions of other people who are doing things. So hopefully you will be able to join us at the symposium. I know 2023, we are planning to be in person. There is nothing like the in-person experience, because it's just wonderful to have everybody come together that, we hadn't seen for a year. Obviously that's post-COVID. And just talk about all the new and exciting things that are going on campus. So if you are able to join us, we would love to have you. Again, it's free. And if there are students who are here on the on this platform, please come. We've got some things that we want students to be able to experience. But here's the other piece. We as professionals want to learn from you all. And so we want you to come and we want you to tell us, what you need, what you want, what you're looking for, all of those kinds of things, because it's easier for us to support and give you the resources and support and whatever it is that you need if we know. I'm always telling my students, I'm good, but I don't read minds. So if you don't tell me, I don't know. And it's the same thing with the symposium. We are here to help. We are here to support. And we want to do everything that we can do to support you. But we can't do it if you don't come to things like this platform, the Student Parent Support Symposium. If you don't come and tell us, we won't know. So hopefully you all will be able to join us.
Yeah, and it's something I only learned about a couple of years ago, but being able to attend sessions last year and seeing you have some videos of previous presentations. It spans so much, whether it's student narratives, resources, federal programs related to, which I think Eric in the chat was talking about some of those, just really so all-encompassing that I really recommend it for anyone who is in my spot who did not know as much about this and really wanted to learn more. It was a great place to do that. So I want to thank our panelists, Tracy and Beth. Thank you for your time, your expertise, your insights. I know I learned a lot, and with the engaged chat, it looks like there was some great conversation going on as well. Yes, thank you so much.
And can I say, we had a hiccup with our production company. And so hopefully we've got that hiccup fixed. Hopefully registration will be going out within the next week. But if you are interested, please go ahead and go to the link and just put, I think it's clicking on wanting the update. I think it's updated information, or so that when it is together, you'll be able to get the information or a email to let you know that the link is open for registration. But we had planned for it to already be open. We ran into that hiccup, and so we ended up having to move it back. So as soon as we get everything together, we'll be announcing that. But if you sign up to receive updates, then you'll get the information as to when the registration will open.
Perfect. I think we're all going to run and not walk to click that update link. So thank you so much. At this point, I am going to kick it over to Monica, who's introducing our student presenters.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you to Tracy and Beth once again for being our panelists for today. Today, we have a student presentation from the UCLA Students with Dependence program. So our two presenters are Zuleika Bravo and Aisha Orozco Barajas. Zuleika Bravo is a current UCLA graduate mother scholar in the Higher Education and Organizational Change program. She self-identifies as a first-generation Chicana mother scholar of color and advocate. She currently works for the Students with Dependence program, which provides resources for parenting students, and is the co-chair of Bruin Parenting Scholars, which is an organization that advocates for the community. She's currently researching mother scholars of color in higher education and their labor and campus policy change. Aisha Orozco Barajas serves as the program director for the Students with Dependence program at UCLA. In her role, she works with students with dependence to provide resources, support, build community, and engage in advocacy efforts. In addition, she works with campus and community partners to create accessibility for students with dependence as they work to attain their educational goals. Aisha earned a bachelor's degree in business administration, human resources from Cal Poly Pomona, and a master's degree in college counseling student development from Azusa Pacific University. So welcome our two student presenters.
Thank you for having us today. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, if you can enable us to share screen. Thank you. Hopefully, can you all see the presentation without like the audience window note? Is it just like our presentation, or are you seeing?
We see a small window that says audience when this is what your audience sees.
Okay, go ahead and go back on. Go here. Okay, what about now?
We see the notes on the side. I think the first way you had it might have been right. It was just all we saw was a small little box that said, "This is what your audience sees." Sorry about that.
Zoom technical difficulties. Let me see. Give me 1 second.
Someone already pointed it out in the chat, but more Bruin. So this week we had 2 Bruins on Monday and we have 2 Bruins today. Y'all are doing excellent work. And just to note while you're pulling that up, we'll put the link for the drawing one more time in the chat, and then we're gonna have to close that out.
Okay, let's see if that works. Okay, are you all able to view now?
Looks great.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you all again for having us today. We're going to be sharing some information on the Students with Dependence program here at UCLA. And so I'll have Zuleika, if you can just go ahead and share a bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. So happy to be here. Thank you all for inviting us and just sharing space. My name is Zuleika Bravo. I'm currently doing my master's in higher education. I currently work for the Students with Dependence program as a graduate program intern. I've been working for them for about 3 years. So I did my undergrad at UCLA and I'm followed through with my master's.
Wonderful. And so I'll share a bit about myself. It was wonderful to hear, just like the conversation that was taking place earlier. I actually got involved in this research for parenting students by attending the Student Parent Support Symposium while I was a graduate student. And so I was also a parenting student during my undergraduate and graduate years, a transfer student and veteran. And so I resonated with all of the, just the conversation y'all shared with the student parent experience and the isolation and the need for support. So it was just great to hear and see how this played a full round circle of now I'm in this role at UCLA, working as the program director to continue the great work that was set forth by those before me in the student advocacy. And so just excited to be here. All right, so we'll do a quick agenda overview. So we're going to talk a bit about the UCLA community. We'll share our program overview, some of our main strides of impact, and then we're going to get into the student experience with 2 of our student team members.
Yeah, so as Tracy mentioned, student tracking is incredibly important because if you do not know how many parenting students or who they are, right, on your campus, then you do not know how to serve them or properly serve them with resources and targeted programming. And so the overall student population at UCLA in terms of undergraduates is about 31,600. And then obviously graduate students is a little bit less, 14,300. But the issue that we have is that there is no official local or state mandate to track or identify parenting students. And so there are different ways that we have to do it at our campus level. In 2019, the UC system actually did include a question on the UC application to start identifying students with dependence. However, they do not follow through with which university they actually enroll in. And so that's where we kind of lose track of who our parenting students are or students with dependence. And so in looking at the transfer population, because our parenting student population, a large number of them are transfer students, we see that our transfer population is 3,436. It roughly ranges about 1/3 of the undergraduate population at UCLA. And so getting those numbers, we have about 300 ranging around there of our parenting student population in terms of undergrads. Because we're not able to properly track them, it's really hard to know the accurate numbers of our parenting student population. And we know that graduate students, there are much more within that population. However, because it is so siloed, the departments, the graduate departments are so siloed, it's really hard to get a number on them. And so a lot of the times we have to take it upon ourselves to create surveys, to work with different departments to start identifying parenting students. And one of the ways that we do so is through financial aid. And we offer a university grant specific for students with minor children. And so when they do their financial aid, we're able to track them through that way.
Thank you, Zuleika. So we're going to identify who is a student with dependence. So for our SWD program, we have parents who are either a parent to a child that's biological or through adoption, caregivers, so that can be a parent, grandparent, spouse, guardianship over a sibling. And so we included this picture of, a previous graduation, just showcasing some of our students with dependence. And so for our program specifically, our mission is to provide a caring and personalized support to UCLA undergrad, graduate, and professional school students who are parents, guardians, and caregivers. Our program is committed to promoting the success by offering programs and advocacy that enrich and support parenting students' academic, personal, and professional goals. And so as it was shared earlier, there are intersecting identities. And so in order for a student with dependence to succeed, they must have that holistic support. We must look at them as a whole and be able to provide support on all aspects of life in order for them to continue to push forward, feel supported, retain, and ultimately attain their degree. And so here we're going to actually share our model for SWD when it comes to parenting student success. So there's 4 components. First, we'll talk about meeting basic needs. So according to IWPR, 61% of independent students have a 0 expected family contribution to pay for college. So with 72% of independent students having unmet financial needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs explains that the difficulty in succeeding academically if our basic needs isn't met is very high. When we think of basic needs for our students, we visualize the individual student facing challenges. But for parenting students or students with dependence, this isn't the case. When they're facing basic needs challenges, their dependents unfortunately face these challenges alongside them, often leaving the parent to choose between providing for their families or pursuing their education. We look at academic success and retention. So our team is in the process of developing an assessment plan and collaboration with various departments on campus to determine the retention rates of the SWD community. According to a study conducted by Young and Invincible in 2019, students with dependence are 3.5 less likely to graduate than those without children. Next, if we look at sense of belonging, being a parenting student is often an invisible identity. Becoming aware of identity and resources offered can basically reduce imposter syndrome, it can increase retention, and it can allow us to implement a 2-gen approach, especially during this time of the pandemic. And so we'll move into the 2-gen approach. Our goal is to create a family-friendly culture by working with our task force, which is basically encompassing that 2-gen approach. So the 2-gen approach recognizes the whole family unit and is intentional in creating policy and programs at the institution. Not only will the 2-gen approach benefit students with dependence, but in reality, it'll benefit all students because family is a major factor in a student's educational journey. So ultimately, these components align with UCLA's mission, vision, and values. And so we work to cultivate student learning and success. We can go ahead and look at what the 2-gen approach entails. And so I wanted to include basically this visual of what the 6 key components are. And as you can see here, this is from Ascend Aspen Institute. Again, it's the 2-gen model, and it's foundational to our work of meeting the needs of the whole family unit. So we become knowledgeable of available resources specifically for parenting students on our campus via community partners, and most importantly, through our parenting students' lived experiences. So this allows us to sharpen our skill sets, broaden our lens to support our students. The 2-gen approach, though, is not a program, but it's more so a mindset. It's a support network comprised of partners to simultaneously use their services to support the whole family, as shared in earlier conversations. So here you see how each section is a part of the process, which supports the surrounding gears. So social capital. This is creating connections to people, information, opportunities for growth. Early childhood education and development. This provides childcare partnerships, quality care, support as parenting students navigate their educational journey. K-12 education encompasses student development and readiness, parent engagement, grad and post-secondary prep. Post-secondary education and employment pathways. This creates access to quality education and clear career pathways. Economic assets, access to financial stability via resources, scholarships, etc. Lastly, health and well-being, access to healthcare and mental, physical, and behavior improving opportunities, which is definitely a vital point for, especially during this pandemic, for our parenting student population. So with that being said, something to think about is what ways does your department engage with other areas in these sections, or even how does your institution engage with any of these sections? Feel free to drop any of your ideas or comments in the chat. All right, so next, we're going to talk about supporting students with dependence and their holistic success and how the SWD encompasses that. So first we have office hours. And I am going to be going a little bit out of order, but you can see the visuals here. We have student staff and professional staff who are available for office hours to meet with students. They can meet via Zoom or they can meet in person. Throughout the pandemic, they actually met virtually, which was very beneficial to the SWD community because of, not having to travel or commute to the institution, but being able to meet them where they're at. Programs. We aim to provide workshops, events that engage the community and help students to realize they're not alone. We encourage them to connect and share helpful resources, tools along the way. So our programs are available in a hybrid format. During the pandemic, again, we did host very minimal virtual programming, but we are now transitioning into, again, the hybrid mode, and we do plan to have in-person events. Our team has been really just working together to brainstorm ways to create engagement and get our students involved and provide the supports that are needed. Resources. So we offer on and off campus resources, including counseling and psychological services, the Career Center, advising, financial aid, childcare resources, which include like WIC, CalFresh, CalWorks. Again, we do still need to build a stronger connection, as earlier was mentioned in the chat about CalWorks, and just getting those resources more visible to students. And so that is something that we are working on. Assessment. So this is used to track our engagements, gain a deeper understanding of the SWD needs. And as shared before, it's very, very important to get that concrete data to know who you're serving, what the needs are, and then using this data to present to leadership to be able to make change at your institution. So one of my goals as a program director is basically to gather this concrete data to support our request of the institutional support. I would like to basically just move the work forward and create more concrete policy in place, working with across, where I'm a part of a parenting student Zoom call, if you will, that includes various institutions. And so I've met with UC colleagues and also other institutions, and just sharing those different ideas and ways of assessment that is happening, programs that are available. This has really helped to open the view of how we can move forward in making change. And so lastly, or I'm sorry, not lastly, but the last point that I'll be talking about is the task force, and I'm going to hand it over to Zuleika for leadership. But our task force is basically composed of students and staff across the institution. And so this is advocates, allies for students with dependence. We brainstorm ways to support, discuss policy, and create change. This actually stemmed from the family-friendly campus toolkit, which was shared in the chat earlier. And so a funny story is I actually met the UCLA team while I was a grad student, and they were in the process of starting this toolkit or task force and getting just basically like in the first stages of moving this work forward. And so I actually tried to replicate what was being done at UCLA from the Family Friendly Toolkit over at Cal Poly Pomona, which was, there is movement happening. And then now obviously coming into this where I was able to transition into this role, and the task force, you know, during the pandemic, there was a bit of a pause because of the transition. And now we're getting ready to pick it back up. We're looking at various partners and seeing how we can come together even stronger to continue to make change. And so with that, we do have student representatives on this task force, but I do want Zuleika to share about just the leadership efforts that SWD supports.
Yeah, thank you for that, Aisha. Now, in terms of student leadership, I think that this has been one of the best driving forces for change on campus. The task force actually allowed student representatives to engage with different administrators and different campus partners. And I feel like it actually also allowed campus partners to kind of dig into what are the issues that parenting students are actually facing by actually talking to parenting students. And in terms of just like leadership, the history for the Bruin Resource Center, and I'm not sure if this is the same for different campuses, but student organizations actually pushed for the creation of these different departments. And so it was the Parenting Students at UCLA organization that created the Students with Dependence program. So it actually institutionalized the program. And because of that shared history, the student organization works alongside the actual program. So they support each other, whether that be institutionally or through grassroots movements, right? Grassroots advocacy. And I feel like because of that shared history, there's a lot of support for building that student leadership within the Students with Dependence program and across the board at the Bruin Resource Center. And then I kind of want to move into how this led to the creation of priority enrollment. So two major strides of impact that we've done at UCLA, and I believe it has been done through large part of student advocacy. So if it wasn't for the task force and being able to engage with campus administrators, priority enrollment would not have been a thing. This was definitely a collaborative effort that was moved up to higher administration and into the academic senate. So being able to present our research as students with the support of staff to the academic senate to get the ball rolling, to really bring awareness to this issue, the issue of time management as we discussed during this session, right? And what are the benefits of priority enrollment for parenting students, right? Whether that be academic support, mental health support, being able to alleviate that generational and emotional distress that we have as parenting students, and the family support, right? So we're able to meet the demanding schedules of our families. Because again, if we do not meet the needs of our children, then we're not able to go to school. We're not able to get that education that we so desperately also need, right? And I also feel like this also supports the 2-gen approach, right? Where our children are seeing us go to school and they see the importance of education, and we're passing that on, right? We're making an investment for the next generation of students. And I'll pass it back to Aisha for CCAMPIS.
Yes, and so another amazing project that stemmed from basically the student advocacy, the task force, and their collaboration is CCAMPIS, which is a grant, a federal grant at that that stands for Childcare Access Means Parents in School. And so currently we are in year 1, and this program is designed to cover the cost of childcare for Pell eligible students. And that includes both undergrad and graduate students. Basically what it is that you create a proposal, and you, as long as the students are Pell eligible, you can basically put in any other requirements or tier systems that you feel are necessary. And so for us, we do have tier systems. And so single undergrad parents are our first priority. Our second tier is actually going to be single graduate, and then undergrads who are married. And then we go into our third, which is graduate students who are married. And so we can cover the cost of ages 2 months to 2 years. We can cover full daycare or after school care. One of the amazing things is that we're partnering with our on-campus early childhood education center and our recreation programs, which provide some like after school programs, but we are also contracting with various licensed care facilities off campus. And so we're still in the process of, getting the logistics and administrative processes ironed out, but we are moving forward, and we're in hopes of basically getting this funding out at least by the end of spring, if not early summer. And so we will be having a case management approach, which is another amazing thing. Is with this grant, we are able to actually fund a CCAMPIS program manager that will be working side by side with myself, so that we can better serve the student with dependent population. And so we'll work together to basically outreach, just identify other campus and external resources when it comes to supporting the families. So again, this is a part of the 2-gen approach. And as you in the previous slide, you've seen the gears of how this is touching on early childhood education, the career readiness, the financial readiness as well. And so our goal is basically to assess the impact and the retention of the program participants. And so there is a yearly reporting that needs to be completed. And this is a 4-year grant, which we can apply again, I believe, in the 3rd year, and in hopes of getting the grant to continue, and if not, increased funding at that. But we're really excited to see where this goes, how we're going to make change and impact for the SWD community at UCLA. And so with that, we want to do the most important part of this presentation, and that's for the student experiences. And so I'm going to introduce our 2 students. Well, actually, Zuleika, she's been presenting throughout. She's an amazing advocate leader in this community, but also Joanna Medina, and she has her, she just actually recently graduated with her bachelor's in Chicano studies, and she will share a little bit about herself. So I'm gonna stop share, and if we can get them both thumbnailed, or I can do it, right? Oh, she's already thumbnailed. Okay, great. So yeah, we'll go ahead and start off. Joe, I'll actually have you start with your name, pronouns, just a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here and for advocating for all us student parents. So my name is Joanna Medina. Pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm a transfer student from Citrus Community College in Glendora. I am from the San Gabriel Valley. I just graduated. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. It still feels like, wow, I actually have a little bit of free time. And if I want to read, it's like for pleasure. So I'm excited. Yeah, and then I graduated with a bachelor's in Chicano and Central American Studies. I am a single parent to two beautiful little babies, a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. Yeah, I'm a little biased, sorry, they're beautiful. And some of my intersections, or wait, are we going into that or not yet, Aisha? Just intros?
Okay. Just intros. Like I'll give you a little chance to go ahead, and I know you shared who you are, but if there's anything else, maybe the age of your child, and yeah.
Yeah, so I started my UCLA journey when my daughter was 3 years old. And since then, I'm still here at UCLA and she's 7 years old. So it's been a 4-year journey at UCLA with my little one, but yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we don't have a lot of time. We actually have about 5 minutes left. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry that we took up so much of the time with the presentation. So what I want you all to do is, if you can share your intersectional identities and how that has basically just played a role in how you access campus resources. So share some of the resources that you utilized and what was impactful for you.
Hi, so like I honestly, I think that just being an intern at Students with Dependence. Oh, I'm also an intern at Students with Dependence. I've been there since like 2018. Anyway, just being there, like, and I literally just walked in there by accident, cried to the director at that point, and then she just walked me through these resources, and then she told me, "Hey, we're hiring." Anyway, but I am like so like blessed that I was able to be at that moment. Anyway, I'm first gen transfer, system impacted. I was a commuter for some time. Yeah, and so I could list acronyms for days. I've used CARE, I've used ECRT, I've used CAPS, financial wellness program, CPO, TSP, AAP, everything. Like, and I like to, like, if I hear like a coworker, friend, even from the community, like I'll tell them like, hey, have you applied for this? Have you heard of this? Because I've used it. And if I don't qualify, then I just heard of it. And like, I mean, I want to be a social worker. So like, I think this is like my right, this is the path. So, but anyway, that's just what I love to do. And yes, so that's definitely had an impact. And also during my time at UCLA, I was struggling with a domestic violence situationship. So, and this was a father of my 2 children. I actually had my daughter 2 years ago, right after the pandemic, she was born. So it's been a lot, but yes. So anyway, I could go on with that, but there's a lot of resources that I've used, and I'm grateful. There's definitely a lot of areas that that I could suggest, you know, and Zuleika and SWD and Bruin Parenting Scholars, like they're doing their best. We're doing our best to kind of like address those needs and those gaps. But yeah, there's still some work. But anyway, I don't know if that answered that question.
Yes, thank you. Zuleika, do you want to go ahead and share?
I can add really quickly. So I think my identities were sort of listed. First gen, also system impacted, Latina, non-traditional student. So I started very late in higher education. And I think for me, Joanna really hit it on the head where she said that community was one of the best things that I found, was being able to relate to other parenting students, knowing I'm not alone. And if there were any resources that I couldn't provide as a Students with Dependence like intern, like Joanna, I reach out to her all the time. Like, Joanna, how do I do this? Like, how do we, you know, figure this out? So I think community is one of the best way to really find additional resources that were not on campus and to provide those resources to students. So what I found is like family housing, childcare, and financial aid were some of the top ones that we continue to share with our students.
Definitely, and childcare. I mean, like I love that I could go to ECE at University Village, the opposite side of where I live at University Housing, and just talk to the director, like, hey Nikki, what's up? And like she has this relationship with my daughter, like my 2-year-old, and my son went there, and like it feels great, like just knowing like they're like in a top-notch like facility and they're caring for your kids, and you could ask them questions if you need to, and it's comfortable. But yeah, I like that.
And if I could, I know time is already at the end, but if I could just ask, if there is one thing that you would wish that institutions have for support in supporting parenting students, what would that be? Zuleika, go ahead. I see you're talking.
Yeah, I already have it at the top of my head. We need to change cost of living for parenting students so that we can get more funding. Our cost of living is completely different from traditionally aged and single students. And so if they can put a policy in to change that, then I think that we would have more funding for our parenting student community.
And Joe, I see that you added in the chat. Go ahead and.
I don't know. I think Tracy touched on this, just back on the community thing, and definitely we need free housing. Just, I mean, that's, yeah. But anyway, having a space where parenting students can like just build community, and dinner and childcare and all of that sounds so great. And just like, yeah, it's ridiculous. I didn't think about that, but yeah, literally I will call my mom when I'm on the toilet because that's the only free time I have. Like, and then my kids are still bugging me. Like, so yeah, like just having that space would like make the experience so much better. Like we miss out on being on campus. We can't live on the hill. I did transfer student program, but it was like, oh my God, I was the old lady on the hill. Like, I was like, can you keep it down? Like, but yeah, just building that community and having that student experience and actually being on campus and sports and all that. Anyway, but I'm done.
All right, thank you all so much. We definitely need like a full day of this next time so we can have more time to discuss and share and hear from all of y'all too, all the amazing work that you're doing. So thank you, Jeffrey and Monica, for having us today. I will pass it back to y'all.
Thank you so much. That was learning about your programs. And then I think I speak for everyone here that we could listen to y'all talk about your experience. And it's so important what you're saying. And it's enlightening, you know, those little moments of connection, but then also some really big ideas like changing up the cost of living for student parents. These are great ideas, and let's share these out as far and wide as we can, right? Well, we are right at the end of our time. Again, thank you so much to our presenters and the student panel. It meant a lot to hear from you and for you to share about your experiences. Again, I wish we just had more time. But to kind of wrap up, I just kind of wanted to bring us back to some of these like foundational pieces of that. Supporting students with dependence is, progress towards equity. These issues are inextricably connected. Consider all of the needs of students, not just academic, like Joanna was saying, and Tracy had mentioned earlier. An idea like providing students with help as you are providing dinner and activities for the children. Excellent idea. Build community and relationships to combat isolation, exclusion. As Tracy pointed out, the past 2 years with the pandemic have just really compounded those issues. So again, thank you for all the wonderful ideas that were brought to the table by our panelists, our presenters. I want to highlight, we have one more transfer session coming up tomorrow. So, a little less traditional with a Monday, Wednesday, Thursday event, but Thursday, tomorrow, 1 to 2:30, same time, Central, we will be talking about transfer student mental health, where we have panelists from the JED Foundation, from Appalachian State University, and then we have student presenters from UC Santa Cruz. I think I called them the beach slugs last time, banana slugs, I forgot, it's the fighting banana slugs. So we will move on to picking out our winner. So Monica, if you want to give us our drawing.
Yes, let me just go ahead and pull up the slide. Oh, there we go. Okay. So it's on a cool little wheel, and then actually we'll play music when the winner is announced. But everybody's name should be on here, and you probably could find your name on here too, but let me go ahead and spin it. So congratulations to Robin.
All right, so Robin, we are going to follow up and just make sure that we have your mailing address if it was part of your registration, or if you have a somewhere else you'd like us to send it, we can do that. Again, thank you all for joining. We hope to see you again for the last session of this year's Transfer Summit tomorrow at 1 o'clock Central. Thank you.